Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Proven Inspiration. I do hope you're having a good day. I'd like to provide you with training today, and our topic for today is words of endearment. And this topic is for HP, happily married couples, or couples on their way to being happily married. One strategy that is often not focused upon by a lot of people, a lot of couples, is the words that you call your husband or the words that you call your wife aside from their name. Okay, so their birth names given to them by their parents. Aside from those names, it's important that you use words of endearment when you're speaking to your spouse. Why is this important? It's important because even when you don't say I love you, a word of endearment reminds your spouse that you actually do love them. So you could use words like honey, babe, darling, dear, whatever words of endearment you decide upon, it's really down to you. But what those words convey to your spouse who's hearing you call them by this name, it's telling them, it's reminding them that you love them. So it's very useful for you to incorporate words of endearment when you're addressing your spouse. It could be general words like that, or it could be actually quite specific to your spouse. It could be a made up word, it could be an abbreviation of their name. You could try something different, something unique, and something very specific to your spouse. Poochie Bear, my king, my queen. Something that when they hear that name, they know that that's the voice of their wife, or that's the voice of their husband. They know when they hear that name that it's only their spouse that calls them by that name. So when your husband hears you call him a particular name, he knows that that has to be his wife, because you are the only one who calls him by that name. And when your wife hears a particular name, she knows that that is her husband, because you are the only man that calls her by that name. So it creates a bond between the both of you. It's almost like you're creating your own language. And when you call that name, it could take you to a particular place. That name could come out of an experience, a shared experience that you've both had and you both enjoyed, you both relate to. And so you call your husband a particular name as it relates to that experience, or you call your wife a particular name as it relates to a specific experience. Words of endearment are crucial. They are they're pivotal. They help strengthen the bond in your relationship with your spouse. In addition to that, it's important that when you're fighting, when you're arguing, that you don't abandon those words. When you disagree and you're in a heated debate, you could still say babe or darling. Why should you do that? Some people could just revert to thinking, oh, I don't agree with this person, I don't agree with my husband, he needs to know. Some people actually stoop so low as to call their spouse nasty names. That is unacceptable on every level. But if you wanted to actually be more intentional, even when fighting and when disagreeing, when arguing, use words of endearment. Say, babe, I don't like the way you spoke to me. Even if you're saying it loudly, say, babe, I don't like the way you spoke to me. Or, darling, why did you do? When you do that, it reminds you that this person is on the same side as you. This person is actually your babe. This person is actually your darling. They might not be acting it like it right now, but the reality is this person is your darling. This person is your babe. This person is your honey. It just reminds you. So in addition to all the hot words that might be flying about, the words of disagreements, dissension, arguing, but when you break it up by saying babe, you break it up in your mind by saying honey, you break it up in your mind by saying darling, it reminds you that you are on the same side, regardless of whether you are in a fight or not. And so it helps you to fight for each other and not against each other. Another thing that you should be mindful of is when you actually do use the name of your spouse, the name given to them by their parents, that you do so with care, you do so with love, you do so with intentionality. Try and stay away from calling your husband's name or your wife's name harshly, like Steve or Andrew. Try and stay away from using harsh tones when calling your husband's name, when calling your wife's name. Instead, be more intentional. You try and make sure your voice is soft, your voice is gentle, your voice conveys love. your voice, your voice is just caring. Even if you're in a situation whereby you have to raise your voice, let it not be harsh. Let it not come from a heart of anger or bitterness. Because even if it's a loud voice, it can still have a gentle tone, if you know what I mean. If you're calling a person's name, and when you're calling that person's name, you're calling your husband's name, or you're calling your wife's name, but when you call their name, you have anger and bitterness, and you're just so mad at them. It comes through in your voice, and when you call their name, you reinforce it. You make it transfers all of that anger, all of that bitterness, all of that rage transfers through into their name, and so they hear everything that you're saying in their name, and that's not a good association, because they hear it in their name and they hear it from your voice, and so there's a link that is made. So they link your voice and link their names to things that are angry, things that are bitter. So instead, what you want to try and do is try and ensure that when you're calling your spouse's name, that your heart is filled with love, your heart is filled with peace. Because even if you want to have an argument, you don't need to be raging mad to have an argument. You can wait till you cool down, you've thought things through rationally, and then you can disagree. You can have a conversation that could lead to a disagreement, but you need to just do a heart check and make sure your heart is right before you have that conversation, so that when you call their name, you're calling it with love, with gentleness, with caring. And when they hear their name being called from your lips, it sounds like music to their ears, because nobody takes such care when calling their name but the one that they gave their lives to and gave their all to and said, I do to. When you say I do, it's a huge responsibility. It's not one that should be taken lightly, and it's one that should be used with great intentionality. You've said I do. Be intentional about your I do, and speak words of endearment. Speak the name of your spouse with love, and that will help strengthen your relationship. Okay, these are my thoughts for you today. Please feel free to share this video with whoever you think needs to hear it. Until next time, from my heart to yours, to take it easy. Bye.